Hello and welcome to a special edition Sports Desk podcast here. It's the end of 2016, and like us, I'm sure you guys have all been playing all the sports games, and we're just going to cover a variety of topics in the sports universe to wrap up the year, as well as look forward to next year. So I'm here with Matt Bertz.
How you doing?
And Kim Wallace.
Hello.
Fellow sports aficionados in the office. So I guess, we'll kick it off straight off with the basic question. What's your guys' favorite game of the year?
NBA 2K17, without a doubt. Probably, I don't see anything dethroning it anytime soon, in my opinion. Just that presentation can't be topped. They still do great with My Career. I feel like they really did a good job at not trying to bring in every NBA All-Star with the stilted, weird dialogue, and just focus on a story about two up-and-coming friends making it in the NBA together. I felt like that was more successful than stuff they've done in past years. And then just even the My GM mode, I play that a lot. The fun little voting at the end of each season on new rules for the NBA just was a nice, fun touch to kind of vary things up a bit. I don't see any game kind of doing what they're doing in terms of, like I said, presentation, and every year they enhance that gameplay and it comes a step up from what it was before. So that's my pick anyways.
What kind of rules did you implement for your
I changed around
season?
Draft stuff for drafts. I made it so only the top 3 teams get in the lottery, and then everything else goes by record and stuff. So a lot of those, a lot of them don't get voted on right easily. There's a lot of dumb ones, let's extend the shot clock 5 seconds or stuff. And you can decide on that, or let's make it so people they fall out after 5 fouls instead of 6. And just little things that you can make throughout it. But then there's some cooler ones as you go through. But basically, for me, I messed around with draft picks a lot, and that's the ones that seem to get approved.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I think it's NBA 2K17, and I honestly don't think it's close. There's a lot of hate on the internet for NBA because, certain things with My Park or Pro-Am aren't working exactly how people want it, and those are valid concerns. But, when you sit at our desk and you have to play through, all the games and all the modes, when you add up the numbers, there's just nothing that is hitting on so many cylinders as NBA 2K17.
As I said, across all the modes compared to every other game. And I think that's what a lot of games are struggling with, sports games in particular, is keeping all their modes fun and consistent. And I just feel like NBA 2K is probably the closest you have to every mode in that game is pretty fun and different at the same time.
Now, did you guys dive into any different modes than maybe you hadn't previous years, or maybe, were sort of surprised by, one mode being kind of attractive or catching your eye that, maybe you didn't play in previous years or put as much time into, I should say?
Not for 2K for me this year. One mode I don't play very often is the Ultimate Team style modes, just because I see the addictiveness of it and I just don't really want to toil in that. But I have dabbled in it a little bit with Madden this year, and I love how in depth that auction finder is, because you can find some steals with guys on there where I don't feel like I'm, a lot of times, if you're an elite card that's an 85 plus rating, those things are going for 20, 30, 40,000 coins. And I've been finding guys for $5,000, just some wayward dude who doesn't know what he's doing when he's auctioning off his card. You're able to find those deals because of how hard you can dial into I want to look for a safety from Minnesota, and I don't really care how much the card costs. Just show me all of them. Mm-hmm. You can find some deals in there. So that's the one weird off the beaten path thing I've done this year that I don't normally do.
This isn't a mode per se, but I touch that NBA 2K17 mobile app more than I thought I would. Just because it's the best way to get free coins. And they recently added something which I find really fun is every night they have the NBA games that are on for the night, and you try to pick the winner, and you get 50 coins for each winner that you correctly guess. And I just have fun being a sports fan, being oh, this team's going to win. And it's a great way to bank a bunch of money. And then on top of that, and even just I was playing the actual mobile game that you can get free coins with as well, which I found fun because you just get players and you keep updating your lineup, and then your team goes up against other people's, and I had a lot of fun with that as well, which I never really touch companion apps at all, and I log into that thing still every day to get my free coins.
Those coins are important.
I would say for me, my favorite game this year was Pro Evolution Soccer 2017. I really like the gameplay. I mean, I just spend a lot of time with it. I would say that I'm pretty traditional in the way I play it, mainly career mode or whatever, but just in, again, the variance in the gameplay, the kind of things I see, the things I'm sort of capable of. I think play it probably, one step up from default. And it's just a real nice mix of what I can expect to accomplish in the game, gameplay-wise, and still having those sort of surprises, as well as sort of a whole layer that I still have to dive into with, whether it be special moves or just sort of setting myself up better, in real time while I'm playing. But, for probably, I don't know, maybe the only time or maybe the few times I actually bought NBA 2K17, played a little bit of it. Full disclosure, I'm not a basketball fan, but, I certainly appreciate a lot of whether it be the on-court strategy, some of the things with that. And I haven't dove, super hard into it, but the things that I've played or whatever, I definitely can see why people love that game. I mean, you're even talking about the presentation. I know that a lot of people didn't like the Spike Lee stuff, which I totally get, but even just where I'm in the story, you can tell the voice actors are good. The story is, moves along pretty nice, and they've just sort of, I don't want to say restrained it, but they've kept it within certain boundaries that it's okay, I can believe this, and I'm into this, and I like my relationship with my buddy and stuff like that. So it's, again, it's one of those ones that I can definitely understand, people who really get into it.
They have just nailed it with their announcers and commentary in a way that other games just haven't for me. I was actually playing the other night, and this guy was just introducing my character, and mid-conversation as he was going, I launched a 3 and got it. And it just naturally, seamlessly changed to as he scores, and I was just really impressed by just how smooth it is to react instantly to what I was doing and switch and not make it this weird, jumbled thing that sometimes comes up. I mean, you look at, I know Madam was a step up with the commentary this year. I think people were pretty positive on that. But I look at a game, obviously NHL, you get that commentary that after playing it for one season with the new one, you're kind of tired of it after a while. That doesn't really have as many reactive moments. I'm just really impressed with how NBA 2K just is always reacting, always has stats, always talking about what happened in, your game beforehand and so forth. And I think that really sells the experience, and it's something that you can easily take for granted, but I just always am fascinated by it's always reacting to what is going on in the game and following up on stuff that happened in previous games really well.
Yeah, it's the best at that, and that's where I think it stands above. Madden's getting better at it. I can see they'll do a presentation right after a play where they show this guy last week, he kind of struggled a little bit and he's doing a little better this week, but I was just in the playoffs with the Vikings, and Laquan Treadwell, who doesn't suck in the game, had 256 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns in the wild card game, and the next game starts and they don't even talk about him. You're that guy just had a career defining moment, and no mention of it whatsoever.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's nice that Madden updates from week to week, but there's that little kernel of context, again, that's still missing, particularly towards the end of the games. And I think that's the next tier for them is if it, is a crucial third down in the fourth quarter, let's say, on TV, they always have that thing of, if they didn't make it, that's going to come back to haunt them, or you missed that field goal. And as you sort of build the context throughout the game, it's one thing maybe to present stats or talk about, that was a big third down or whatever. But you need to build that from the beginning of the game to the end, or like you said, from week to week to really make it matter. I think I know what you guys are going to say with this next question, but it may be a good segue talking about NHL. We'll see. Your guys' biggest disappointment for the year?
Oh man, it's always and it's because it comes from a place of love. We love hockey. We love it. You know, all three of us do. We talk about it every day. They just are so far behind in so many different elements to that game. It's not to say there aren't good qualities to it. I think the EA Sports Hockey League is the best of that kind of experience.
Yeah, I think bringing that back was the best thing they've done in a while for that.
And you know, I would like a more nuanced system that allowed me to kind of have some say in how my player develops. But, you know, having those classes really helped the gameplay balance in that mode as well. So, like, there is good things, but God, that GM mode is the worst. It is the worst one by such a long margin.
Just that the My Pro is awful as well. Like, that's one thing where all these other series are taking, you know, obviously FIFA put in the story mode this year, at least trying a story mode, which is like a step up from what it's done previously. And then, you know, NBA 2K, like I said, was what started that whole like, hey, this is really cool. Why aren't more people doing this, where you build your player?
Actually, that was NBA The Life.
The Life.
The Life, yeah.
Little
The
989
Life.
Studios.
Yeah.
Well,
99
NBA 2K, though, brought it back in a way that, like, people just latched on to.
Yeah, it actually
in a way
worked.
I haven't seen,
Yeah.
and I haven't
The
seen
basketball
people,
wasn't horrible.
Yeah, I haven't seen people talk about a story in the sports game like they do with that and how attached they got with it. But then you have NHL that just tries something, and it's like this half-baked, like, let's pick like stock responses that just it doesn't feel natural, doesn't feel anything like, you know, that NHL doesn't have as big of a team, so it's hard for them to compete, but it just feels like almost why even bother in a sense until you can do it well and right. I don't know, because it feels at this point like that's some of the most disappointing parts of that game is like, oh, there's a lot of drama in hockey. You can probably build up a really cool storyline around it, and then it's just so bland and nothing.
And it's all
really
text-based.
Yeah, it's all text-based, and it's the same thing with the GM stuff that comes into it's just like, I don't feel like I have much control over this. Trade deadline comes up and it's not even like a blip on your radar, which is like the biggest thing for.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing in real hockey.
Yeah, for GMs, that is like their time, and just, go right over it. There's like no lead up to it. Like sometimes there's not even any big trades that really happen on that day, because I always will check, and I think there's a lot of missed opportunities.
Don't even get me started on scouting either.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like, I know more about more players going into the next NHL draft as like a dude that's sitting at home. Than you have it. You don't have any information on like 80% of the players, it feels like, when you get into that draft. You're like, I don't know. There's no tangible information here for me.
Something with that scouting. And also with player ratings are always so off. But
you know, we were all excited about sort of them layering back on the features that they dropped off in previous years, and certainly with the GM stuff, a lot of it caught our eye and the kinds of things that it was going to present for you to do. And I almost wonder if it's like, as you mentioned with a small team, and let's be realistic and all that sort of stuff. It's almost as if, for instance, the scouting. We've not liked it for years, and it's almost as if, do you need to simplify it to the point of like, look, we know it's not going to sort of look and feel in some ways like your Madden scouting or your scouting in some of the other EA products, but almost just make it work. I mean, it sounds like a very simplistic way to put it, but it's like, what if the scouting, for instance, or some of those GM options or the morale or whatnot was almost dialed back to the point where, yes, it's in there, but it's simply just a simpler system that conveys information to the player, correctly and works as you expect it to. Because I think it's that expectation of
it's the lowered expectation.
If you give me X tool, I'm just going to hope that X tool works
as you
correctly.
brought that up, both of those things still don't make any sense to me. The scouting, like, I can look at guys and it just doesn't ever add up to like, oh, I'll do all this scouting and I'll have all this going on, and then I go to pick the guy and it's completely different from what it is. Or What else were you talking about with the scouting? And then
just like the Bertz, I think, is talking about the information that you get, per player, but also, for instance, like the morale system.
The morale system, sorry, that's what I wanted to bring up. That is just so infuriating. Like, I will give my guys a passionate, like, speech going into the 7th game of the, the playoffs and be like, all right, guys, come on, we've got this, da-da-da. And it lowers the damn morale of, like, the majority of my team, and it makes no freaking sense.
That's because they think you're full of shit.
It's supposed to be jitters. I don't know. That morale system drives me nuts because it has potential, but the way that it, as you said, it's executed in the game is just so broken in a sense of like how they lump players together. Like, I wish it made a difference in like giving them like hot streaks or something. Like, I know it ups, a bit of their, rating, but it never feels like it makes that much of a difference. And it's frustrating.
That's because all the ratings are in that damn general pool of like 80 to 84.
Yeah, that's infuriating.
90% of the league.
And just like player growth is really frustrating too with that. With your draft, especially you spend all this time scouting and you want like your picks to turn into something. And it's like the majority of the times they're sitting still in like the 60s or 70s after a few seasons. And you're like, what's going on here? Like, it's frustrating. Even if you get like one of the top 15 picks, that doesn't guarantee you're getting a guy who's even going to be able to play in a year or two. Like, sometimes it's like 3, or like you'll have a guy with high potential, and for some reason just, and that happens sometimes. But it seems very consistent in that game, which I cannot figure out. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And what's the difference between like a bottom 6 opposed to like a top 9 and like, so forth. Like it's very weird.
Yeah. They have a lot of issues to work through, I think.
Well, one, up and comer that I think we all think did break through was Alex Hunter of the FIFA's of the Journey story mode. I think, we all enjoyed it. We thought if there was a criticism of it, it was that it was somewhat limited. It's just in the English Premier League. It's just one season. But at the same time, I think some of that restraint helped, EA Canada achieve their goals with it, which was basically get it on the map. It works. I think players' expectation of what you can do in there is somewhat realistic, if a little limited. But I didn't know if you guys had any sort of tales of your version of Alex Hunter, some of the decisions you made, or some of the things that you saw in there with the cutscenes or whatnot?
It was a good first start.
I that's what I was going to say. Good first start.
They lack a lot of the infrastructure that mode needs. Like, you can't dial in and see where you rank on your team for scoring or anything like that. Like a lot of that stuff is missing. But as a first attempt, like I thought the acting was pretty genuine. The story arc. This kind of we kind of talked about how ours were very different with the way they ended, and
that was surprising.
Yeah, kind of weird.
I haven't finished mine yet. What happened with you?
Well, I mean, not that there's spoilers, but it was. There was different cutscenes. There was different ways that a similar situation sort of resolved itself, and it wasn't just a matter of like winning, losing. It was like, it was literally like, I'd never seen that cutscene, and I didn't really the way it manifested itself in his play, my play was organic, so it was kind of nice because I wouldn't have.
Pretty cool.
In other words, it felt like my ending was the ending I should have had, and it was like that totally made sense, kind of thing. And his
cool.
did as well. So
usually they struggle with that. So on the first try, at least, like I said, I feel like it's a solid foundation, which I'm excited to see them build off of. I think I didn't have high expectations. I thought it looked really cool, but I also know when you're first putting that stuff in there's a lot of kinks to iron out. It's trying to get the feel. I thought like what they did was cool. I liked, the start of it going, to your little tryouts and trying to like show up everyone and having that like, I don't know, and taking it back from when he was a kid, I thought was cute just because like it's a little cheesy, but I mean, that's what it is when you play sports when you're younger. I mean,
and that's what we want out of story modes is there needs to be some drama, I mean, some of it you expect.
The stuff with his parents is a little overblown, but I don't doubt that happens in families with sports. Don't get me wrong, but
so I'm not sure, if our listeners what their expectations were, but certainly you look at the FIFA's the Journey sort of story mode, and you contrast it a little bit and compare it with NBA 2K17. The latter certainly chooses player customization as a way to let players get invested in their character. While so far the journey is a little bit more of a manicured sort of route that draws its own I think inspiration and drama that way. And I didn't know if you guys had a preference for customization versus the what you kind of call maybe a pure storytelling kind of approach to those story modes.
I always enjoy customizing my character just because I'm a control freak and I like having that way of suiting him to how I play. But I also think there's something to be said with that's really hard to pull off. And even NBA, as we've seen, we talk about it being a really interesting story mode. But as we've seen, they have had ups and downs with that, and they're on.
They try to have it both ways too.
And it's very hard to do both ways. I think what FIFA was smart to kind of dial back and just be like, all right, we're just going to focus on this and not have, because like I said, every conversation, we were having. I know NBA. My favorite part of it is it's you're playing as a point guard or a shooting guard, and they're like, you're not rebounding enough. Is the reactions from fans? You're like, I'm not a rebounder. What the heck? And I think, to have it the way that it was, like I said, I like kind of having it. I like having NBA where I can customize. I also like kind of having that story where I can just focus on that and not have, all this outside stuff that can kind of interfere and make it not feel as authentic at times,
I think my favorite version of my player still, or my career was still 2K14, where you could just do some outlandish stuff and be just a giant prick.
Yeah, I don't know why they took that away. I feel like they had.
You could request trades every other week, and it was
that
just
was
ridiculous.
One of my favorite. I feel like they struggled with having choice in there and making it lead into something or make sense because everybody's going to play their character a little differently, but that was part of the fun, was being able to put your personality in it. Or I liked they've brought back the little hazing a little bit in this version, but I like that original thing where it's oh, do you want to go party for the night, and then you wake up the next morning and it's uh-oh, I'm in trouble with where with coach and stuff. And the clown nose that they made you wear and stuff those are really nice touches. And I feel like they've gotten away from that a little bit, which is kind of, I liked with Alex too, being able to kind of temper my personality and how I handled certain situations. I thought that was well done for, their first crack at it.
Yeah, it didn't really have any consequences. You know, you're almost well, I'm always going to get more followers being fiery.
Yeah.
And the penalty isn't that great, so I'm just going to keep doing this.
Yeah. I think that's what both these modes I want to see them do in the future is have more consequences to your actions, make it a little unpredictable in a sense. The press conference, NBA does this too. There's two responses when you're in a press conference. And it's okay, one's kind of the showboaty, I'm the star, look at me. And then the other thing is just the normal response that's not going to cause any drama or controversy and make you more likable. And it's just those are just two shades to play it, and it just always feels so predictable.
Just like sports journalism. Right? Those guys aren't saying too many interesting things most of the time. They're dialed in.
Right? It's just. I wish there was more variation, more consequence, more different decisions, and how I like that NBA brought in some stuff where you can choose how to spend your time a bit, but you don't really have too many choices. I feel like you have your press events that you can go to with your sponsorship deals, and then I like it because when they have the players on your team might call you up to hang out, or other NBA players, and then that's how you kind of build your name up with the press by hanging out with the big shots and stuff. But I wish there was more of that because it feels like they just had all this free time for practicing. And I'm just at first I thought I was supposed to practice all the time.
I practice so goddamn much.
I was I've stopped because I was this isn't really doing anything. I really didn't need to.
It does develop your friendship with Justice Young because the more you interact with him on the practice court, the more likely he is to warm up to you. So there is some narrative impact, but I mean, when we did the afterwards about NBA 2K17, they were well, you're not supposed to just sit in there and fill up the bar every single time. It's well,
Well, and then
You
can,
put like 90 practices in front of you.
yeah,
compared to,
exactly.
like-
It makes it feel like you're supposed to fill up that day with something, or like it looks bad if you're not practicing, you know,
Yeah.
because you're trying to prove yourself in a sense. Like that's where the story gets in the way of like what they want you to kind of do and embrace it. So I don't know. I wish there was more to do with it. I like the text messages. I thought that was a good touch for this mode, even though like you only have, again, like the 2 responses. But I like it because you can just like kind of rag on people as the poop emojis and stuff to respond. It's just fun.
There's a lot more depth there.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's where FIFA will try to go. But, it takes time. You can't build a mode like that overnight and expect it to compete,
And I think, with player choice and us wanting to, experience more and steer our character in certain directions and have it mean something, certainly that means a lot more work for the developers. If you want to say that, for instance, them shooting and creating a lot more cutscenes or whatnot. And I almost wonder if, maybe embracing some version, obviously appropriate version of permadeath, so to speak, in the sense that maybe you don't just get a game over. Maybe it does rewind you back, certain time. Maybe you lose certain stats. Maybe there's a way where it's not like you become, let's say, a worse player, but you do have to sort of delve a little bit more into the consequences. If you want to be a bad boy, you lose more sponsors, and sort of make you work in other areas, or at least make you rehabilitate your image.
Become a journeyman.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to deal with that. And then,
that'd be so awesome.
or maybe, it's like a legacy thing, like just, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, but let's say, like with Christian Leitner, for instance, a guy who went through his troubles here in Minnesota, but, at least when I watched the ESPN documentary, it sounded like he had a journeyman career that spanned a couple teams, and he ended up being, by all accounts, an okay pro, but that's not the kind of thing that, your average fan, they just think of him as, Christian Leitner, the bad boy. So point being is that, there would be that sort of trade-off in other ways where you can have it this way, but you sort of have to consign yourself to, certain image of yourself or what, make it harder in other areas.
That's
Because
what
if
I'm saying. There's so much drama with sports that they can get in those, like as you're saying.
Because there were certain times in the journey where it would give you a game over, because clearly it wasn't going to branch off into this other direction.
Yeah, I wanted the story to go a certain way.
But it was I wouldn't say a consequence, but it was like, okay, game over, and you need to redo that. So if there was more of those, or there was different versions of those in different places, I think then maybe you could have your personality, but also have some sort of consequence of it, so to speak. But one of the things I did want to get back to was something we talked about earlier, which was Ultimate Team. I know there's a lot of Ultimate Team fans for the various, and by the way, I use that as a blanket term for all these
the games have
different kind of modes or whatever. And I know that people love, and I'm going to admit I don't understand it, but people love just seeing other people open packs.
Because you rarely get anything good. That's why.
Why is it when I watch other people open packs, they get all the good stuff, then I go to
They don't
open my
upload all the
packs,
other
and it's
videos,
like,
that's why.
that's what always happens. No, I was like, there's some like fascination with like getting that rare card and like seeing someone open it and
which
and
I
putting
understand.
that team together.
It's just like when you were a kid with baseball cards, football cards, oh my God, I got Joe Montana rookie card.
That's
awesome.
A good fundamental base. And I don't certainly want to take away that joy from anybody, because I understand that. But I guess my question is where do we go next? Because certainly I think most of these companies are making some pretty good money.
Oh yeah, that's where they make a lot of it.
On the mode, and I get that. That's great. They funnel it back into other areas of development. But I wonder, as fans of those modes, I just wonder where we take it next. I mean, there's the joy of opening packs. Great. Now what? Do we want Ultimate Team maybe infused more into career mode, have everything sort of sync up more? Is it, because they're just basically, team of the week, team of the month, team of the year, team of the day. I mean, it's been shaded into so many. It's just an explosion of cards and stuff, and I just wonder if, because also there's that question, like FIFA had that thing with the people. They would get certain boosts for certain, Ultimate Team cards, and some of that wasn't actually carrying forward into gameplay. And luckily they patched it and fixed it. But that just goes to show you how much, with so many cards, so many different variants, how thinly all this stuff is being sliced. And so I just, I'm curious where where the mode goes next.
Yeah, I think Madden's done a good job of at least differentiating the experiences you can have in that mode. There's, the gauntlets that you can go through that are kind of situational based challenges that you can do as a single player. You don't have to just go online and play other people. They've given you other things to do. But I mean, I don't know that they're going to mess with the formula too much. And if they do, it probably involves figuring out a way to get more people to spend more money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like the people who are successful in those modes pay for their teams essentially and get them up in a way where like so I'm going way back to like when NHL first introduced it. I was so excited and got myself a little involved in it. Where I was like, oh gosh, I'm spending way too much money, just because there was the thrill of like building my team and going in the auctions and trying to like get the players I wanted. And I really got excited about the tournaments because I think that's fun, competing against other people. But there's at points where you're facing teams and you're just like, this isn't even fair. Like this guy has like 99 speed against, my guy who's sitting here in like the 80s, which is fine, but like they're just speeding past with the speed boost, and like it doesn't feel like it's fair competition anymore, where like it's not really about skill as much. Like you can still, if you're a good player, compete, but it's just always slanted in the other direction. And I don't know how the other modes, because like I said, I've only had my experiences. I've done a little bit with NBA and a little bit with NHL, but I haven't dug into like Madden or.
They've figured out ways to like, they've created salary caps, kind of like you can only have X amount of players that are worth that, those elite level guys. So they've figured out a way to kind of keep the balance a little bit better. And then there's the divisional play, where you're not always going to go up against a dude who's got 90s everywhere when
that's good.
You're early
that
on.
Was so frustrating. That's what I just like. I want to have like a fair shot where it's like I didn't just pay for my team, and that's why. I like the idea of being able to kind of. It's why I fantasy draft a lot in the games.
Yeah.
It's like I like building my own teams and being like, well, what if I had this player as my right winger and this guy on defense, and like, oh, would this guy pair up well with it? With this other defenseman when it has the left shot, the right. Like just figuring out different combinations that I think would be interesting. In a perfect world, if I could have my own NHL team, this is what I would do. So that's kind of what I see in Ultimate Team is like the appeal is like, hey, I'm going to build a team and, but I can't really, I'm going to like keep opening packs to try to get it better and more like, more with the players I want. And that's kind of the appeal to me, but I don't see, people, like I said, people just like, as Bert said, opening those packs and getting that rare card that you've been waiting for, which never really happens to me as much as I'd like to say. But, maybe I don't open enough packs because I've been pulled into that. It's really easy, especially with the expiring contracts and stuff, to, all right, I like this guy. I've boosted him a bit with stats. Like, I've made him a better player, and oh, wait, he's out. Like, now I have to, his contract is up. I've used the card as far as I can go now. Well, now I have to find someone to replace him. And it's you fall into that loop so fast.
I hate the damn loans.
Yeah.
They're the limited use players. Oh, that shit pisses me off. It just gives you a taste of what you're missing,
Yeah, I don't really know that brings up a good question of like, beyond just what it is it really going to evolve into something more?
That's not where I want to see the innovation,
I don't
honestly.
think it's going. Yeah, I would rather them put the time into like these modes that we're talking about, which I think are very fascinating. Like, even with, like I said, we were talking about these story modes, I feel like it's brought people into sports games that were getting bored with them for a while. And it's like, oh, they're not. And like, as we as sports fans know, there is so much drama that goes on in a damn sports scene. So many highs and lows that I think that's really interesting to capture and let people, kind of play out their own stories within that.
There's one thing I think no sports game has captured successfully, and it applies both to like a career mode and franchise mode. And this is where I want to see the most innovation. I want someone to nail free agency.
Yes.
No one's ever captured the thrill of the chase.
Oh, man.
Like I'm going all in on this guy, but that means I'm going to miss these guys because all these teams are targeting these guys. Oh, where's this guy going next? Like, it's so easy to just force your way through free agency. I had Matt Khalil on the Vikings tell me, go fuck yourself. You're not signing with us. I'm not signing with you. I want nothing to do with your organization. I just paid like an extra $500K and he comes right back. Like they've never really figured out that balance and that intrigue of those opening days of free
they could
agency
have so
that
much
all the sports
drama
have.
where it's like you hear in the press that he's leaning one way, and then you can just like go back and like have another meeting and be like, what do you want? What do I have to give you? Because
I kind of wish they'd use like the college games. They had like amount of hours you could spend in a week to recruit. I wish they'd have that for free agency, so I can go all in to get this corner that my team desperately needs, but that means I'm going to miss out on some other stuff. Or you could, spread it out more and like build, more conservatively. That would be really cool to just have that in those modes. So you're making that choice and like, because those guys, you have to go all in to get those high tier free agencies. You got to fly them out on your private jet. You got to spend a bunch of money taking them out to dinner. You got to bring back like old players to tell them about the legacy of the franchise. Like there's a lot that goes into that pitch, and to have to like make some choices around that and have it factor into, like the decision making for the actual player would be interesting.
Oddly enough, I feel that we've, at least sports games, Madden in particular, has touched on that, and then they dropped it like a hot pan, which was, I think it was 5 years ago, where Madden
the bidding war.
Yeah, the bidding war for that first day, that first hour, that first couple hours of free agency, and it was on the timer, and you saw the sort of the eBay style, I think is how they called it. You see the bids coming in or whatever, and then like that was what I want to say 1 year, and then they just got away from it completely. They didn't bother to refine it. They didn't bother to sort of evolve it at all. It was just like,
did people not like it?
I mean, I assume the feedback
that
against it must have been so hardcore against it.
Well, it was kind of a weird thing because like a lot of the bids were happening at the same time, kind of, right? So if you were bidding on one guy, you weren't aware that your backup guy was already being bid on too. I think that might have been one of the big issues with it.
So, we're talking about some of the things that we want to see for, improvements for some of these games. And I guess looking forward to 2017, we're in, I think, a pretty comfortable, good cycle for the console, the sports games in relation to where the consoles are at. Obviously, there's, PS4 Pro and Xbox One S out, which has, the HDR component. But I feel we're in a good sort of sweet spot, so to speak. We're hitting our stride with the sports games in these systems. So, I mean, whether expectations or whether things you want to see them do, I mean, is 2017 going to be different than 2016, or are we... I guess you could argue pessimistically that apart from, maybe FIFA iterating on their story mode or maybe it coming to Madden, I mean, what are we really looking at for the coming year in terms of
Frostbite
big changes
is going to be a component this year, right? Because I think Madden's probably migrating. I don't know if NHL will do it quite yet. That's probably next. So Madden maybe migrates with Frostbite and they introduce a story mode. That's something that we still might see this year. I really hope Madden continues to hone on the animations for tackles. There's so many weird looking tackles all the time that just look ragdolly and gross. I think there's room for improvement there. Hockey has so much work to do. They can do a million things to make that game better.
I would say I did like, NHL, by the way, to harp on it, but again, I was disappointed with that game. But I will say that I did like the jostling system. I mean, it's kind of more of an outgrowth of the same pin against the boards feature, which we've had in for years. But I did think that I was able to tie up guys down front effectively, and sometimes you draw a penalty, which makes sense. But at the same time, there was the counter sort of penalty in a way, which was that if I wasn't on top of that, if I wasn't tying guys up, if I was letting people just float free in the slot, I'd end up paying for it. I'd end up getting a goal again. So it was I thought that was a nice gameplay addition in a series that, as we said, certainly could use plenty of other additions. But I will say, as a positive for them, I thought that was a pretty nice feature.
It's not a horrible. What did I give it? A 7.5, somewhere in there. There's good qualities to it. I think just our expectations, when you look at what's going on with the rest of the sports game industry, they are lagging behind.
Looking forward also to 2017, certainly NBA is a franchise that we've liked for years or whatnot. And I know, back in the last generation, they made at the time, which was a somewhat of a semi-controversial decision to stay with their engine from, the PS2 sort of heyday while Madden switched over, and they had plenty of their own issues switching over to new engine. But, long story short, I wonder if you guys think at all that any sort of major engine switches or whatnot for the NBA series, is it time for them to move on at all, or is it better for them just to ride this out for this generation, being that things are going so well?
I don't think 2K looks at things in such, across the whole company. I don't think they look at it like, we're going to build a new engine. They're always building new parts to an engine that's constantly evolving. I don't think they go for that marketing message, we're switching from Ignite to Frostbite. And, that game's constantly evolving. They're constantly making engineering changes, to the way the animations work, to the way the dribbling works, to the way the commentary works dynamically. I don't think that game's lacking in technological innovation.
I think they'll probably, I would think they'd stick with it and write it out, honestly, and just keep evolving, as he's saying, and adding new stuff. We'll see. I mean, it's working, I wouldn't think they need even to do that, marketing angle of new engine,
Also in 2017, I think we were going to talk about it a little bit on this show, but I think it's a pretty open and shut case. People always talk about, when it's a new year, new slate of sports games. They always talk about, will college football return? And that's just not going to happen anytime soon, as much as we would like it to. And certainly also getting, more NFL licensed titles. Again, EA has that exclusivity locked up for the near future, so that's not going to happen.
Or a baseball title on Xbox, a quality one.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of those situations are just status quo at the moment. So unfortunately, we won't see changes in those. But one of the things that with the Sports Desk I have been sort of dipping my toe into, and I use that term with full knowledge, just dipping my toe, is some of the smaller sort of indie sports titles. A lot of them are more the simulation based ones on PC that take a look at non-licensed college football, non-licensed, football and things like that. And kind of, I didn't know if, you guys, have any interest or thought about playing any of those, or also if you think that sort of indie sports, movement, we've seen Rocket League, sort of take off, if there's any sort of room in there where we can have some different sports experiences apart from, we certainly enjoy the AAA ones, but, perhaps there's some room there in 2017 and beyond for some of these other experiences.
I think there's a ton of room for arcade sports games to thrive because, these sports games, they're hard to get into if you're a newcomer. There were constantly games that were way more easy to adopt when we were younger, like Arch Rivals and, Double Dribble and Blades of Steel. You didn't need to know how to operate a forecheck to play Blades of Steel. So like a game like Old Time Hockey, which was just announced this past week, I think there is room for more experiences like that. Can they get the marketing push that they need to, get people aware of them? Wonder. That's the tricky part,
Yeah, sports are already tricky in that regard unless people have a name to go with it. But I mean, you look at stuff like the sports manager games that have been super successful because they do something really well and focus just on that. So it's almost like break out a mode from a game and just have that and be the only focus and go really, really deep dive with it. And I also like that type of experience as well. For people like me who, like I said, control freak, like to manage everything and go through and study the stats and be like, well, we're really not getting say, our free throws are horrible. We need somebody who's going to come in and lock down 3-pointers because we're not making, bringing in the right people and looking through that. So I think there's definitely room to cater to certain players who like specific things about games. I'm still waiting for an indie kind of sports game story thing that just focuses on one story that's not it can be just a point click and and then there's little small games. I think there's so much room and potential, and that's how we start other games get ideas and start getting better is seeing sometimes these smaller games. Like as Bert said, my only thing is it's really hard to get those to catch on. But I mean, we've seen success stories before. I mean, look at Rocket League. You know, maybe you get the deal. You go up on like strike that deal with Sony to be a PlayStation Plus game, and like people get hooked by just trying it out and having that as an option. People like things that are free. That come with their subscription. So I think there's a lot of potential there, and I'm interested to see if more people will come into the fold in the future, especially seeing all these like kind of evolutions throughout the sports genre and seeing people kind of want certain things and just focusing on one thing rather than having to provide a complete package with like, these 5 different modes that everybody wants and struggling to keep that all afloat.
Yeah. Hopefully, I think, like I said, I've tried to highlight some titles on the Sports Desk, and I hope to do more in the coming year, and hopefully that'll, those games is existing. Like you said, they plant a flag for a mode that they do well. Hopefully that sort of steers the overall sort of sports ship in some different directions. But I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time out to talk to us today. And if you guys have anything else that you want to hear about, certainly drop me a line, drop us a line, an email or Twitter or whatever. We're always open to topics on the Sports Desk. And going forward, certainly for the year, we're going to cover plenty of games and have plenty to talk about. So please, go to GameInformer.com and, read all about what we're talking about. So thanks again for talking about it. And thanks again for tuning in for this special edition Sports Desk podcast. And enjoy the rest of your 2016, and we'll have plenty to look forward to next year.